This is Rod, Boomer Guitar Sessions, episode 18, Game Changers, the Beatles. How did the Beatles change the world? That's what we're going to talk about today. How are they the most influential rock band in the history of the music? That's what we're going to talk about today. We got to go back before the Beatles to understand what the Beatles did, because if we don't know what happened before the Beatles, we don't know what changed because of the Beatles. 1951, Alan Freed, he comes up with this Moondog hour thing. 1951, he's a DJ. He says, we're going to call this a rock and roll party. That's when rock and roll, the term rock and roll was coined. 1954, we have Bill Haley and the Comets. First rock and roll hit, kind of, had rock and roll in the title. So by 1959, the first generation of rock and roll was dead. Elvis went off to the military. Buddy Holly died. Little Richard threw his jewelry in a river and professed his love to God. Jerry Lee Lewis got in trouble for marrying his 14-year-old cousin. All these kinds of things. Anyway, one after another, these things happened. 1959, plus rock and roll really did scare the establishment. The first generation of rock and roll, like Elvis could not swing his hips without getting in trouble because they thought that it was just, the world's going to come to an end. So with that said, rock and roll, first generation, it's said to have died, but I think what really happened is it went underground. So over in England, when all this was happening, the skiffle craze was a big thing. Skiffle craze was like their punk rock. It showed that the youth of the day, they were learning how to play their instrument. It was a basic art form, basic instruments, good rhythm, you're in the band. Can you sing? You're in the band. Okay, so with that said, what did the Beatles do? The Beatles they didn't have make it in America till 1963, and they didn't come over till 64. So what did the Beatles do that was different, and why do I think they were the most important rock and roll band ever? And I like lots of stuff. I'm not trying to, I like lots of stuff. So the thing that I think was the most important thing, it was that the first generation of rock and roll, what you had was you had a star, and then you had a backup band of minions who you don't really know who, unless you're a music nerd, you don't really know who played with Elvis, even though Scotty Moore was his guitar player, and he's a god. Guitar nerds know that. But the general public does not know that. Bill Haley and the Comets, who was a guitar player, nobody knows. It was Bill Haley was the guy who was the star. Even Buddy Holly, he had the Crickets, but nobody knows. You can find all this information out, but it was a star and a backup band, and the star made the lion's share of the. He did all the interviews, and it was not a democracy. It was like, you want to go play out and tour with me, and you'll make a paycheck, that kind of thing. So with that said, when the Beatles hit, they came over to America. What they changed is they changed everything. It's like, this is a democracy. This is a democracy, seemingly. Now, I'm sure there's some people, as is the case with all democracies, some people have more power than others, but we have 4 people. Each of them is a valued person in this band. Each of them gets equal spotlight, equal say. There is no hired guns. Ringo was not a hired gun. He was a part of the band. Okay, so they made the rock and roll band a democracy, not a star and backup minions. They made it a democracy. So from there on out, they people follow that pattern. When I say that, the Kinks, the Who, it was the Detours, the Yardbirds, all these bands, they sprouted up. The Beatles were the thing that blew the doors off of the whole thing in America. So with that said, a democracy where everybody has a role in this, and everybody in the band sung, okay? Everybody in the band played their instruments. Everybody knew where their lane was, but it's like they had a role, but everybody sung And everybody attempted to write songs. Even Ringo wrote a song in the Beatles. And a lot of people forget that. Octopus's Garden. Okay, so now, the big thing that the Beatles did that all the other bands did, like the Rolling Stones and all that, the Beatles were, I want to say, also one of the most musical of all the bands to come out of England during that period. And there's a really good reason why. In Germany, you play in the nightclubs. That's where they learned how to do what they did. That was their college, where they played in these nightclubs in Germany, and it was all night long gigs. Okay, so you'd be playing to all hours of the night. Pretty soon, very soon, in the early days of rock and roll, you didn't have that many songs you could play that were just rock and roll. They borrowed from all kinds of stuff, from Tin Pan Alley kind of sounds to Motown to rock and roll to country music. They had all those different influences in their playing. If you look at the other English bands like the Rolling Stones, whom I love, Rolling Stones, when they first started playing, they were bands on bills that would play in clubs that they would have a 45-minute set, if that, and they would do their songs, and that would be their set. So they did not have to play the lengthy sets that the Beatles did. So I think that's an important part of how the Beatles grew. I think that's an important part of why they sound the way they do, because they're drawing from all these different musical threads and influences, from country to rockabilly to skiffle to kind of Tin Pan Alley issues, like where does songs like Michelle come from? The chord progressions of that's not rock and roll. Okay, even some Latin music. Okay, so with that said, they very early on, they would borrow. They were a cover band when they started out. Okay, yes, but what they covered was the best of that generation, not the best rock and roll of that generation. They were the best. They borrowed from Motown. They borrowed from all kinds of different, Chuck Berry, all kinds of stuff. Okay, so with that said, very early on, they learned the value of writing their own songs, because you're not going to make any money playing other people's music. You're going to make very little money playing other people's music. You're not going to be able to make a name for yourself if what you're playing is always other people's music. So very early on, they worked on their songwriting. When John Lennon and Paul McCartney met, Paul had already written songs. Okay, it was already a thing. So with that said, very important to write songs, as our band writes its own songs. That's kind of revolutionary too, because everything in pop music, Elvis didn't write his own songs. Buddy Holly did. Okay, Little Richard did, but Little Richard had minions playing in the background. So, but like all the Motown acts, all the pop music that was from like at the end of the first generation of rock and roll to the Beatles dropping in 1964, everything was really, really safe pop. All of that was written by teams of people like Taylor Swift does today. So the Beatles, what they said is, we're going to write our own songs. They never co-wrote. They never co-wrote with Lieber and Stoller. They might play a Lieber and Stoller tune, but they never co-wrote with them. Their own songs were their own songs. So with that said, they borrowed from everybody. They learned. The world changed because of them, because of all the music that every year they influenced culture. The whole PA, the idea of public address systems, didn't really exist really in a big way in 1964, 65, 66. So the Beatles stopped going on the road, because everything that was great about their albums wasn't great about their live show, because technology did not match what they were able to do. In other words, they did not have the tech to have a PA system. So when they played Shea Stadium, nobody could hear them. So PA, public address system, now there was an industry that needed a PA. So that whole industry developed because of the Beatles, and because and because of the opportunities and the framework that they established that everybody else borrowed from. Garages all over America. When the Beatles dropped in February of 1964, garage bands all over America, which late 60s and 70s and even into the 80s, bands, that's when they started playing music, it was because of the Beatles. Okay, they inspired everybody. That Ed Sullivan Show. Not that many things in music history have that can talk about that. So with that said, also recording technology changed with the Beatles. It was a different game. All kinds of things that they were a rock band that never repeated the same album over and over and over again. Their mission was to redefine themselves with each album. Alrighty, so with that said, I have some actionable steps that we can all learn from the Beatles. If you put these in your guitar playing, if you put these in your band stuff, whatever it is, your creative life, you can learn from the Beatles and you can take from their influence. And you don't even have to sound like the Beatles in order to do this. So the first step of action, start a band. Get with people. They don't have to have the same absolute interests as you do. Just get with people that you enjoy their company, and we're going to make music together. And this guy might like this, and this guy like that. We got to come in the middle. That's the way it's going to work. Okay, so play and learn. Number 2 is just play and learn with other people in general. Okay, the idea of getting in a room and playing music with other people, it's a dying art form because we have computers. So number 3, learn your instrument well enough that you don't have to use studio gimmickry to fix your inadequacies in the recording studio. So if you're hitting the drums too hard, there's an app for that. If you need beat correction, there's an app for that. If you your guitar part can be cut up, your voices can be auto-tuned. But if you really want to do it, can you play in a room and sound good in a room with other people? That's what the Beatles inspired everybody to do. Okay, so number 4, borrow influences from more than just one source or style of music. Borrow from all kinds of different things and mix it. Okay, how you're going to be original is how the ingredients that you have and how you mix them. Number 5, cover songs from good sources. If you listen to the Beatles doing Motown, they did Motown great, and they learned how to harmonize through these Motown songs. They learned how to do that. That was their college. There's a reason why we cover songs. We need to know that. We need to learn vocabulary as musicians and bands, and we need inspiration and we need guidance. Like how is it done? That's what covers can do. And also they're instant knowable songs that when you're first starting out, your audience wants to hear songs that they know. That there is value in that. Okay, so number 6 is be a student of chord progressions and melody and how the two interact. All kinds of different chord progressions the Beatles were a part of, and some of them they helped to popularize. Learn how to play in key, learn how to play outside of key, learn how to do stuff, learn to just shape sound with the music that you're working on. Number 7 should have been up earlier. This is kind of obvious. In your band, write songs. Write songs. Number 8, write a lot of songs. In other words, your best stuff is not going to, everything you write's not going to be gold. Okay, so write a lot of songs. Write a lot of songs. Number 9, learn to sing. Everybody should learn to sing, even a little bit. How do you write a melody without learning to sing? It's like the vocals are an important part of our craft. So learn to sing. Start with unison singing, then get into harmonies, and then listen to guys that do it. Listen to be cognizant of this is what's going on. And like, if you learn to sing and you practice singing with other people, then when you hear that in other people, it's an experience that you can attach an interest to because you've been there yourself. So number 11 is explore all manners of sound. Different sounds out of your guitar, different sounds out of your drums, different sounds out of. Don't be an elitist. That is a big thing. Experiment and take in everything, and what can I do with this? And be open. Don't be shut that there's only one or two or three or four good sounds. And if you want that limitation, then if you have a lot of limitations and you only borrow from like three or so artists and not that many sounds, you're going to sound like a copycat because you don't have that much stuff that you're borrowing from. So the originality comes from the mixture of styles and sounds and influences. And if you don't have much to mix with, then it's going to come out across as being a copycat. Number 12, don't write the same song over and over again. That's a thing that's popular now, but it wasn't always popular. Okay, write different sounding songs. Do different things with every song. You don't have to write the song same. You don't have to have a prototype song that every song has to do this. Every song has to do that. And every song has to have a breakdown. Every song has to have somebody growling on the vocals. Every song has to have a solo. You don't have to have those rules. Every song can be different. The Beatles had songs that they didn't have guitars, drums, or bass on. The only thing they had on them were vocals. That were the Beatles. Okay? So with that said, don't write the same song over and over again. The best rock bands, in my opinion, and this is subjective, they borrow from lots of stuff. They have different sounds with each song and with each album. So number 13, reinvent yourself. Don't be the same thing over and over again. Don't be that guy that, like in my generation, if you had a Motley Crue tattoo or whatever like that, you forevermore were playing music that was MTV metal. And it's, don't be that guy. Anyway, all right. Number 14, play shows. Learn from the shows. Do better next time. Shows are never perfect. Shows through experiences like this is how we figure out what works and what doesn't, and this is how we shine. This is how it's through those experiences that we make the band better. And this is learning that you can apply to everything, every walk of life. It's not just in a rock band, but it's wonderful in a rock band. Number 15, help out other people. Don't be a jerk. If you can give other people a leg up that you didn't have, do that. Okay, the Beatles, you had Badfinger, you had Jimi Hendrix, you had the Rolling Stones. Because of their affiliation with the whole British invasion thing, they helped spawn, and so many others, Motown acts. Okay, they helped everybody out. They're heroes. They helped out. You people who would have gone into obscurity, the Beatles brought back into the light because these are our heroes, and because the Beatles were the hot ticket of the day. They brought them along for the ride. So help out others when you can, okay? Because it will come back to you. All right, number 16, almost done. Write on other instruments. Helps you write other songs, other sounding songs. You're not writing the same song over and over again. Again, I keep reiterating that. But there's a thing on the Get Back documentary where George is showing chords on a piano, working chords on the piano, and how he would write a song. And it's like he's not a piano player, but the result of that was he was able to come up with a song, something that sounded really cool and developable really quick, really quick. So, and sing a melody over top of that. Okay, so on an instrument that isn't your principal instrument, you'll come up with something different, I promise you. Number 17, this is the last one. Record your songs. Share your songs. Play shows with your songs, being the spotlighted. Market your songs in any way you can. Don't worry about making money right out the gate. You want to develop your thing and do what you love. And put your love into it, this is your thing. Record those songs. Do it now. Anyway, point is today, we all can learn a lot from the Beatles. We all benefit from them, whether we like them or not. The Beatles, this is how they were game changers. And I hope you found this informative. And until next time, I'll see you later. And remember, you can do this. See you then. Hi, this is Rod from Boomer Guitar Sessions. I personally wanted to thank you for being part of our community. If you like what we're doing here and you want to see more of it, please hit the like, subscribe, and share. And this helps me spread my musical messages to all over the world. Thank you. I appreciate you. And always remember, you can do this.